It's The List and your boy with Jimmy Van and Sean Ross Sapp.
What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Are you kidding?
Jimmy,
are you kidding me?
Can you believe it? Miracles
Really?
do exist. I'm here.
Yeah.
I got here contrary to you not wanting me to be here right next to you.
This is your surprise.
What could be more of a surprise? I took that money that you gave me, that you touted the raise that you gave me, and I put it towards a plane ticket, and I flew myself here. I think I'm going to stay all week. I'm going to go to the Jays-Reds game next week. I'll be here for the birth of your child, Jimmy.
Is this kind of like the Wayne's World thing?
I guess you can call me. I guess you can call me the Godfather. I'll be there.
Will you be?
For the birth, yes.
And somehow we're sitting in the exact same spot, and yet we're not sitting on top of each other.
What are you talking about? You're right here next to me.
Okay, so you got to explain to the audio listeners about the silliness that you're doing.
To the audio listeners, anything. They don't deserve it.
You got a green. You actually got a green screen?
A green screen? This is not a green screen.
It's not a green screen?
Jimmy, here's my passport. I'm there. Look, it's my passport.
Yeah? Can I see the stamp?
I flew my chair too.
Can I see the Canadian stamp on that passport?
No.
Show it to me? No?
Don't be nosy. Mind your own business.
Okay. Kudos to you for going the extra mile. You actually got a green screen.
Going the extra mile, I went hundreds.
How long are you going to keep this charade going? Like, how long? You want me to go another 10 minutes doing this?
I didn't fly all the way to Toronto to play charades, Jimmy. I flew here to confront Ventura.
Oh, is that why?
Can we
high-five each other then? How do we high-five? Oh, sorry, my thing is backwards. How do we high-five?
Like that.
Like that.
Don't be ridiculous. So, first off, I went back and I watched the show last week. Actually, I found myself, I listened to that show 2 or 3 times. I don't know why.
That's because you love me.
Well, because, I don't know.
I am the talent on the show, Sean.
Yeah, that's funny. Anyway, I just want to say that opening segment where you talked about how Ventura approached you, I don't even want to confront Ventura. Let's talk about you acting like I was holding you hostage or something.
What?
Go back and watch that. You're sitting there like, I just want everybody to know that it's all okay. Nothing's wrong. And you're like blinking SOS signals in Morse code at your office.
Well, it's because anybody that's watching right now, you clearly have me locked and trapped in this office. Like, clearly we're both in the same office, and I am trapped in here right now.
I came here representing the Kentucky Wildcats. It's beautiful.
And we got 2 visuals.
Canadian tea sucks. What is this trash?
Oh, you planned that one out in advance. You totally planned that one out.
When do I not drink tea during the show? I always do. I gotta get that caffeine going.
I meant the Canadian tea joke.
I know that you Canadians had the day off Monday, but
we did.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is 5 straight days of podcasting for me, and those were 4 days of NXT. Backlash, Raw, SmackDown. I had my hands full. Jimmy.
You did. And you somehow managed to come to Toronto and sit in the exact same spot I'm in.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm full of surprises, Jimmy. I go the extra mile to make Fightful.com work.
You know what's really interesting is when you said, I think it was on the Raw podcast, the post-Raw podcast, where you said, I got a surprise for Jimmy. And you're like, Jimmy, I know you're watching. I got a surprise for Jimmy. I was convinced that your surprise was going to be that you love this job so much that moving forward you would refuse payment. Like,
well, you know,
Jimmy,
I am full of surprises. At all times, I am like
That's
a walking
why
surprise.
That video was on my screen earlier, because you were testing that out.
What video? What are you talking about?
There was a little one of me when we were doing the testing on this.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Okay, anybody that's listening to this on iTunes and not watching on YouTube, you are missing a lot of interesting shit. Clearly, you have too much time on your hands. I'm not giving you enough work that you have time to do all this shit.
Well, here's the bottom line. I'm worth it because I'm the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Sean Ross Sapp, your boy. You're not going to find a lot of journalists who have that blue check mark who will cut a rug like your boy.
That's actually, can you stay there because you're only about 6 inches away from James Ellsworth's dick? So can you stay there?
Perfect!
The entire show? Is that possible?
Why'd you even give me a raise if I could do that?
That's all you really wanted. It's true. That's all you really wanted. If you turn sideways, like we could turn this into something really interesting.
I kind of like it. I'm cool how I am.
You are? Okay.
So we got a show to do.
Did anybody on my team help you with this? Somebody must have.
It was all Lindsay and Ventura.
Lindsay actually was part of this?
Yeah, totally. It was their idea. Ventura sent me an email and said, "You want to get back at Jimmy? Here's how you do it."
That's so not Lindsay. Or that's so not Ventura.
Well, it was Lindsay too.
Uh-huh.
And Melissa was like, "This would be fantastic for an ad." Nigel had nothing to do with it. His hands were clean.
Okay, if they're listening to this show or watching the show, you and I are going to talk about your compensation later. So be ready for that. And whatever vacation time you're getting, you can consider it slashed in half.
Hey, am I allowed to invoice this Toronto?
Am I allowed to invoice this back?
Am I allowed to invoice that
this
plane
location,
ticket?
this office?
This plane ticket that I got?
I want to see what you hooked up later. I want to see what you did because it looks really good.
It's iffy.
It's just a bed sheet or something? Oh, no,
it's not a bed
It's a
sheet.
shower curtain.
It's a green screen. It's a
shower
screen.
curtain.
It's a green screen. The lighting isn't that good.
Okay, well, how come the top still has Ellsworth and the bottom is your shower curtain?
Because I can move this around as I please, Jimmy. You gave me some pretty cool software, you see? Now you can just see James Ellsworth's hog chilling.
Right. Which is probably what you're going to keep for the rest of the show, given your level of interest.
Maybe. Like, why does... Like, here's even more. Like, who's to say you're even here? Check out the video version of the list and your boy.
Yeah, seriously, anybody that's listening to this on iTunes, you might want to go on YouTube or Fightful.com and check this out because Sean had a lot of time on his hands with a shower curtain this week.
It was a green screen.
That was a shower curtain.
I mean, I have. If you want to invoice it, I got the Amazon receipt.
You probably got it from Bed Bath & Beyond because it's a shower curtain.
And that's like okay. One. It looks like one. I need to iron it, honestly.
Oh, yeah, you should. You should.
Rob Lapika says they didn't add an extra 30 minutes for nothing. So let's get into the show.
You got to fill the time somehow.
Let's talk about the show.
All right, boy. Well, kudos to you because I got to say that was creative.
Yeah,
that was. Are you going to leave that up? Are you going to leave that up, or are you going to put your shower curtain back up?
I'm putting the shower curtain back up here.
Well, kudos to you, man. That was really good. That was the first thing I had on my list today, on the list of Jimmy Van right here, was Sean has a surprise for me. That was actually the number one thing I had. So, good for you, bud. I want to, now we're going to get into Jinder Mahal in a minute, but first, I want to do another contest. So you did a contest. I have a bunch of copies of Edge's autobiography signed by Edge. You did a contest and you gave one away.
By the way, our boy Guzzamatic has to get one of those because he actually kept count of the nicknames for us.
So he gets a copy for that too?
Of course.
Okay, you need to run this by me before you start giving away copies I don't even have anymore.
Well, I'm here in Toronto, so I mean...
There you go. So you can go to my house, or you can put up a green screen and take a picture of my house.
Yeah.
Put up your shower curtain and do that. So I want to do another contest. And I want to put it up on Fightful.com in the forum. And it's going to be to answer this question. Who will win the Fatal 5-Way match at Extreme Rules? And who will they pin to win the match? I want you to put that up on a thread on the forum, and I want people to post and give their take. And whoever is the first person to get it right, you're going to get a signed copy of Edge's autobiography, signed by Edge. So,
yeah, I want to say, I love how active people have been in the forums. Like, since we've relaunched them, the growth has been really awesome, and it makes, like, before, it was kind of inactive. We were working through bugs and stuff.
Right.
it almost seemed like a chore to visit them, but now I love it. I look forward to refreshing Fightful.com and seeing what people are talking about. We've got everything from movie reviews up there to SmackDown threads, people wondering who attacked Enzo, talk about the UK matches. I'm really, really liking it, and I hope you guys go check those out.
You know, you look like you put a desk chair in your bathroom right now. That's what you look like.
What of it?
I'm just waiting for like the curtain to get pulled back, and I don't know, like your wife.
Want to give me another raise so I don't have to broadcast from my shitter?
Hey, at least it's indoors, because with you, I didn't know what to expect because you're in, Mid-South Kentucky or wherever the hell you are. So at least you have an indoor place, and I don't see a door.
Why would you trash? Why would you trash where I'm from, Jimmy?
I'm just doing fun Sean Ross Sapp jokey stereotype, Sean. That's all it is.
See, I don't think you are.
Yeah, I am. I don't see a door with a moon cut out in it, so that's a good thing.
We'll talk about it. So like, let's get into the meat of the show, Jimmy.
All right. Okay, let's talk about Jinder Mahal. And boy, man, do I have a lot of stuff to discuss. I have a lot of facts, but I'm gonna I told Sean, I'm gonna knock these out quick. I'm not gonna bore anybody. You are really something special.
What?
People that are listening on iTunes, I'm telling you, you're missing out this week because of all of the magic that can you make yourself sit on it? So Sean put up a thing in his background where it looks like he's in his bathroom or in a bathroom.
Hey Jimmy, how are you?
Fucking guy. You know something, man? There's a such thing as being too much into the gimmick, Bret Hart.
Yeah, almost like when somebody asks me if I can mime shitting on a fake toilet and my cord comes out when I'm trying to appease him.
Maybe if you had have just kind of let the joke go the first time instead of trying to ride it out for 15 minutes, we wouldn't have been in this predicament.
Well,
okay,
listen,
Brett? Okay, Brett?
Listen, if you all hear how much of an ass Jimmy is, it motivated me to immediately not fly. I ran back to Kentucky. I'm the fastest man alive.
You are. Yeah. How did you get the shower curtain down already? Is it in a different area? Or you just yanked it down?
You're always worried about my bathroom. Why is that?
Well,
what happened the last time you were nosy about my bathroom? You messed up the stream, Jimmy.
You had your shower curtain up, you pretended to shit on a digital toilet, and you screwed up the entire show.
I didn't pretend to shit on a digital toilet, Jimmy. I pretended
to
did you
really shit on the digital toilet?
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Well, you were bitching
Is that
about
why
me.
we went off the air for 10 minutes?
You were bitching about me living the gimmick. I lived the gimmick, Jimmy. Man, I'm glad to be back home in Kentucky where the tea is delicious.
Okay, Brett. Good job on that one, bud.
Needless to say, guys, I will be doing some heavy editing this evening.
Yes, you will. And I'm sure we probably lost all of our viewership.
No, we didn't.
Guys, just a couple of fucking morons.
We didn't at all. Actually, not even close.
So you're gonna splice this together so it looks like all one piece, right? And all that crap.
Yeah, so all the people who are hearing this and seeing this after live are gonna be like, what are those idiots talking about?
Right. Well, you can keep the first part in until you screwed it up.
You mean you screwed it up by asking me to pretend to crap on a digital toilet, which I instead really crapped on the digital toilet. So.
And what is it that your parents say when you're a child? They say, if somebody jumps off a bridge, are you gonna?
And I say, do they pay my bills?
Oh, is that all it takes?
I mean, listen, Jimmy, I'm a whore.
Kudos to you. That was actually good. I have no comeback for that.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was actually good for you. That was good, man. How do I go into Jinder Mahal after that?
I don't know. I was in India on the scene. I was ready.
Yeah.
I had it queued up.
I saw that. No, it was in your background.
I was gonna do I'm here live on the scene, and people do not give a shit.
I saw it. Yeah. All right. Well, let's. I guess it's so difficult for me to try to get serious after all that nonsense.
Oh, it was
but
great.
Let's try to get back to the list of Jimmy Van right here and talk about Jinder Mahal. So as I was saying before, your bullshit with the digital toilet screwed everything up. When he won the #1 contendership, and you and I talked about Jinder on this show, I chose not to go into the business side because I didn't know how serious they were going to be about Jinder Mahal. But now that he's won the title, clearly they're going to get behind him, so we need to talk about it. So Let's break it down first for people that might not be familiar with the situation very quickly. Jinder Mahal is a Canadian wrestler of Indian descent, born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, as a matter of fact. And he has had 2 stints with WWE. The first one was from April 2011 to June 2014. He was released from his contract, brought back in July of last year, July of 2016. And he spent about 8 months essentially being enhancement talent. And what that means is that his job was to make others look good and to lose his matches to his opponents. That's what an enhancement talent is. And he did that for 8 months. Out of the blue, this past April, he's injected into a #1 contender match for the WWE title. The internet was in an uproar about it. What the hell is going on? How does this make any sense? He was a loser for 8 months. And last Sunday at the Backlash pay-per-view, he defeated Randy Orton, and he won the WWE Championship. And that has got us kind of where we are with this story. So I think there's 2 sides we got to look at, and you have addressed this on a couple of the podcasts, Sean. And Chris Harrington did a good article yesterday about business in India, and we're gonna get into that because that's really why this decision was made. But let's first talk about the creative side of this, because you've said a couple of times on these podcasts, I wish there was a storyline explanation as to why he was put into the #1 contender match, because there has been no storyline explanation, right?
Correct. So, I mean, that was the only thing that I was like, that doesn't make sense. Was why was he in the contender match? He can win all these subsequent matches because he's done so with the help of his buddies. That makes sense. But why was he in that match to begin with?
I want the people in the live chat right now, I want them to tell you that they can see and hear us okay, because I still have a loading thing. They can?
Yeah, they can hear us.
I still have a loading thing in the middle of the screen, so I'm kind of wondering
You're okay. Stop worrying about that.
Okay. Brett.
Let's tell the people that you thought it was me up to something again.
Yeah, I did.
I hacked Skype, too.
I did. No, because when a little window came up, I was like, Sean's going to fuck. He's going to put his face in the middle of my forehead. He's going to do something stupid. So just don't do anything dumb again, Brett, okay? I don't want you to get unplugged again. So let's talk about the creative side of the Jinder Mahal thing first. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. So like I said, he was brought back. He was re-signed in July of 2016. And every week, with the exception of his first week back, when he beat Heath Slater, because that was part of a Heath Slater storyline where he was an undrafted wrestler by either brand. Aside from that, Jinder lost every week on television. He lost decisively on television in 2 or 3 minutes.
I think he beat Swagger one time, and that was.
Did he beat Swagger once? Okay,
once.
But the thing is not only did he lose, and not only did he lose quickly, he was losing to mid-card guys. It's not like he was losing to Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. He was losing to Darren Young and Neville and Sami Zayn. By October, he was relegated to Superstars, which I think in the U.S. is only on the network now, right?
Yes. Superstars doesn't even exist anymore.
Doesn't exist anymore. Okay. So by October, he was relegated to Superstars, and he was continually losing to Darren Young in like 3 minutes on Superstars, or 7 minutes, I think, 1 week on Superstars. Then on April 2nd, WrestleMania 33, he was in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And for those that might not be familiar, what they essentially do is they take 30 guys that they don't have anything to do. They have no plans for them at WrestleMania. They put them in a battle royal, and then the winner supposedly wins this Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal trophy. Jinder was put into that, and surprisingly, he was one of the final 2 entrants in the match. And I remember at the time, people were like, "Why is Jinder one of the last 2 guys?" Remember? Like there was surprise about that. And he ended up he was eliminated by a guy named Mojo Rawley. And the point of that match was that a football player by the name of Rob Gronkowski, who is a star player with the New England Patriots, he's friends with Mojo Rawley. He was at WrestleMania. And that was essentially an opportunity for WWE to get him on the show to get press.
Yes.
And Jinder was the guy that had to, basically get jobbed out to a football player in that match. Mm-hmm. So that was on April 2nd. Now, you would think that
still last month.
Still last month, right? You would think that because he was suddenly, one of the final 2 in the Battle Royal, that he was in for an immediate fast push. No, he moved to SmackDown on April 11th as part of the Superstar Shakeup. He went from Raw to SmackDown. Immediately was squashed by Mojo Rawley again on that episode on April 11th. But then, out of nowhere, things started to change, and I want to bring up a house show on April 15th because this is a good part of the story. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Sean. So Jinder was on Chris Jericho's podcast on the May 17 edition, yes. And he was talking about his sudden rise, right? He said that on a house show in Champaign, Illinois, on April 15th, and it was a Raw brand house show, he was wrestling the Big Show. Now, obviously, Big Show's got some stroke in the office. He's really tight with Triple H. Big Show's going to know some things that not everybody is going to know. And the Big Show told Jinder Mahal, I heard the office is getting ready to do something with you. I heard they've got big plans for you. And so I'm going to make you look good in this match. And even though Jinder lost the match because that was what was booked, Big Show let him body slam him, which is something that he didn't do with a lot of people, right? So that was the start of it, was that house show on April 15th in Champaign, Illinois, when the Big Show, who knew something, made him look good. Then on April 18th, and keep in mind, this is 1 week after Mojo Rawley squashed him on SmackDown, right? He was included in the #1 contender six-pack challenge for the WWE title. And even back then, there were a lot of questions. How come AJ Styles wasn't in the match? How come Kevin Owens wasn't in the match? How come Baron Corbin? And how come Jinder Mahal, who had lost for 8 straight months, is in this match? He wins that match. He becomes the #1 contender. And then all of a sudden, he starts winning. On May 2nd, he defeated Sami Zayn, who up until then had pulverized him every week that they wrestled. Then on May 9th, he scored the pinfall in a 6-man tag alongside Baron Corbin and Kevin Owens against AJ Styles, Randy Orton, and Sami Zayn. Then on May 16th, he beat AJ Styles, which was a huge match for him, that he actually beat AJ Styles. And then at the Backlash pay-per-view last Sunday, he beat Randy Orton for the WWE title. In terms of creative, tell me if you agree or disagree, I consider it embarrassing in terms of creative. To me, it's no different than the Brooklyn Brawler beating Hulk Hogan in 1988 for the WWF title, or Barry Horowitz beating Bret Hart in 1994 or 1993 for the WWF title. And I'm not knocking Jinder as a talent, right? This is not about Jinder Mahal as a talent. This is about the creative booking and about the lack of foresight and the quick decisions. Now, you have said that you want a storyline explanation, and I have 2 answers to give you to try to explain this so that you can, try to understand. And unfortunately, there really is no good answer. The first thing is, quite simply, it doesn't matter to Vince McMahon. And one thing that Jinder said on Jericho's podcast is that he had heard how Vince thinks that wrestling fans forget the past, and so it doesn't matter what a wrestler has done before. It's
embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. He thinks that wrestling fans forget the past, don't worry about it, the kind of thing. And when you think about the fact that most of the current roster, they were wrestling fans previously, before they were wrestlers. Triple H was a massive wrestling fan. Are you telling me that if you ask Triple H about a storyline that Ric Flair was in the 80s, he's not going to remember?
Here's what draws the concern for me. A lot of people are saying, oh, this is great. New people, new stuff, getting new opportunities. What it says to me is that Vince McMahon believes that for 1, 2, 5, 6 years at a time, he can make somebody lose every week and thinks that his fans are too stupid to remember it. So what does that mean for anybody's favorite?
Yeah, and if you think about the recent past, I think about Matt Bloom is one of the examples that comes up. They brought Matt Bloom back as Tenzai, and one of the reasons it didn't work is because every week on Raw, the crowd was chanting Albert. Mm-hmm. They remembered that was Albert.
Because they tried to treat people like they were stupid.
Right.
All you had to say was, this guy used to be Albert. He reinvented himself in Japan and became a huge star. He found his footing. That's all it takes, man. Like they chanted Husky Harris at Bray Wyatt for a while.
That's right.
All he had to do was go out there and say, I used to call myself a tank with a Ferrari engine, and that wasn't getting it done, and I lost my mind. People aren't going to chant that anymore.
Right, and if you remember an article in Vice.com dated December 9, 2016, and if anybody hasn't read that, go back and look it up. One unnamed former WWE executive said, you can't commit anything to paper there because with Vince it can change so fast.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, and I'm going to go into this in a minute about how I think this came about, but I think they had no plans for Jinder when they signed him, and I'm going to, again, talk in a bit about why that is. I think that in April, certain things happened from a business perspective that made Vince decide, at the drop of a hat, okay, we're going to go with this guy. And that's why that's why it came out of nowhere. And again, there was no storyline explanation because Vince just doesn't think it's required. He thinks that people forget.
The thing is, I absolutely think that Mahal can perform to WWE standards at that level. I do. But you look at his physique in September of last year, suspect compared to now. Because that transformation happened before our eyes. That's suspicious. I'm not going to say, people, you can let your eyes tell the story. He works really hard. I'm not denying that he doesn't work really hard. In fact, I've had so many wrestlers, probably a dozen different wrestlers that I've spoken to about the situation saying he works really hard and we like him. Unanimously liked. He's beloved backstage, not only just in WWE, people in Impact who have worked with him too. In fact, Impact wanted him before this. Why is that? Because Impact for the last several years has been trying to make Mahabali Shera work for their market in India. And it ain't working. Not only that, but I've had wrestlers from Impact saying, like, when we talk about the comparisons, they're like, they're not kind about Mahabali Shera. And from what I was told, Impact was like, yeah, there are better options out there. We need to get him. A question I have is, with Impact being in India in a week, do they need to be sending WWE an edible arrangement right now? Because it can't do them any harm.
Are you saying to try to get Jinder?
No. Should they? I mean, now I'm sure there are plenty of people in India who didn't give a damn about wrestling. At least a few.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Who may pay a little bit more attention to it. Now, I'm sure those are sold shows or something, but that's a question I had. But the big question I have is, if you're a WWF superstar, or WWE superstar, if you're Sami Zayn, and you look at how Jinder Mahal looked in September, you look at how Jinder Mahal looked now, you are of Syrian descent. What does that tell you that you need to do to get over the hump?
His look was not the reason they went with him. I mean, it didn't.
Let's be real. Let's be real. If he looked the way that if he did in September, they're not going with him.
It certainly helped him. There's no question about it. But certain things happened, and I'm going to get into it now. Certain things happened in April that led to this decision. And again, his look certainly didn't hurt him. It helped him. But there were things that happened that led to this decision. So I think that, I mean, when he came back in August, that's when he started back with the company. He looked good. He didn't look the way he does now, but he didn't look horrible when he came back in August. And I think that if he looked like that today, they still would have gone with him based on things that have happened. But let's go into it. So I want to talk about the business side. And again, Chris Harrington wrote a good piece on Fightful.com yesterday about WWE's business in India. You guys should check that out. I was joking with Sean that Chris stole my thunder because I had all this research, and he covered a lot of it in that piece. So check that out. WWE's top 3 markets in terms of television revenue are in the US, the UK, and India. Okay? And Chris estimated in his article that the India TV deal currently accounts for about 12% of WWE's total rights fees, but that by the end of the deal in 2019, it's going to be a higher percentage and it's going to be comparable to the UK deal. There was a story at Investopedia.com dated April 21st talking about how WWE was trying to pump up its presence in India. And the reasons included, obviously, the population base. How many times on SmackDown this week did they talk about 1.3 billion in India? It's a massive population. The other thing is that India represents WWE's single largest regional contribution to their 750 million social media followers. And you had mentioned before about how Jinder was a YouTube sensation because your post-backlash numbers were really good.
No, not the post-backlash numbers, but some of his numbers before then, like around the start of the push, the numbers were really good.
Right.
Then when he started wrestling, the matches were down. If he's not wrestling, they're pretty good, yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. I mean, he's not the greatest in the ring, but we'll get into that. Then I think it was Kyler that said on Twitter that the Punjabi celebration that's on YouTube from SmackDown this week was already at 1 million views within 24 hours, less than 24 hours.
Yeah, and I usually do those, and I'll have them ready to go by 4:30, 5 p.m. Eastern. But lately, the numbers have not been cracking like 870,000. They haven't been doing anything. Right now, with about an hour to go before that standard, it sits at 1.28 million. The next best is 630,000.
Right. Now, here's been the problem for years for WWE. They have been unable to monetize that fan base in India, that massive fan base outside of the TV deal. They don't run many live events there for a lot of reasons. And again, Jinder talked about this on Jericho's podcast. You need special permission to run there. There's corruption with the ticket brokers there. The working conditions aren't great. The flights are long. And because of all of that, India just can't be part of a regular travel loop. The last time they ran there was January of 2016, and they're not scheduled to go back until September of this year. And so live event revenue is just non-existent when it comes to India. Then when you look at the network, they launched the network in India in English in October 2015, and WWE doesn't reveal subscriber counts, but as of April 3rd, there were 424,000 paid international subscribers, and I don't think India even cracked the top 4 internationally. Brandon Howard did a little bit of research for me, and he said that the top markets outside of the U.S. for the network are the UK, Germany, Canada, and Australia. And so there's another area that they're not able to monetize.
Despite
that massive
Canada's
market.
terrible sweet tea.
Right, yeah. Then if you want to talk about merchandise, obviously they're not getting merchandise due to live events because they don't run live events.
Also, he doesn't have merchandise right now.
Well, no, but he doesn't yet. But again, we're gonna get into that. But merch has been pretty minimal. And last month, the month of April, that's when I think WWE got serious. And this is why I think Jinder was put into the spot. I think last month was when they really kind of flipped a switch and decided that they needed to do something. On April 3rd, they launched the WWE Shop in India, which is www.shop.in. It was the same day that WrestleMania was broadcast in India. Then on April 20th, they announced that they appointed a new VP and general manager of WWE India named Shitesh Shrivastava. And they said that he will lead WWE strategic business initiatives, day-to-day operations in India, work with partners across all of WWE's lines of business, television, live events, marketing, sponsorship, new media, etc., etc. A couple of weeks ago, May 10 to 12, WWE and Sony Pictures Networks India, which owns 10 Sports, and that's the network they're on in India, they did a media event in Mumbai, and they brought the New Day in for that. And so here's the trick. The key component to making this whole thing work, the key component to getting merchandise in the shop, the key component to maybe potentially doing more live events there, the key component to trying to monetize that social media is they need to have an Indian wrestling star. But there's a trick to it. You can't just take a guy from India, put him on TV, and he's going to be a big star. The trick is that WWE has to find someone that is not only of that ethnicity, but they are capable of successfully working at the top of the card with the core U.S. audience. They've got to be well received by the core U.S. audience. And on Jericho's podcast, Jinder said something that I thought was notable. He said, just because you're Indian isn't enough. If you're a bench warmer, nobody cares. But if you're a player, everybody cares. Mm-hmm. And that's what he said. Now, for years, believe it or not, WWE had that guy in the Great Khali.
Yeah, big time.
And a lot of people might be surprised to hear this. Khali's a huge star in India. He's massively popular in India. He started with the company in April 2006. He was plugged into a program almost immediately with The Undertaker. He won the world title a year later, became a made man in India. And the core audience in the U.S. was they were receptive to Great Khali because he was 7'2". Right? Even though he couldn't cut a promo, he wasn't a good worker in the ring, he was 7'2", and he was believable as the antagonist of The Undertaker. And so he worked with the core audience in the U.S., and because he was put in a prominent role, he became a big star in India. As time went on, Khali became immobile. He became more of a novelty. By November of 2014, he was gone. And at that time, they hadn't launched the network yet in India. They hadn't launched the shop yet in India. And so even when Khali was popular, they didn't really have a way to monetize his popularity because they didn't have these business units yet. In June of 2015, they announced that they had signed 2 new wrestlers from India. One is Jeet Rama and the other is Kishan Raftar, and they assigned them to NXT. They both appeared on the India tour in January of 2016, but neither have really shown yet that they're ready for the main roster. Then in late April, there was a tryout in Dubai that included 10 wrestlers from India, but obviously anybody that they sign now, they'd be nowhere near ready for the main roster, right? And that's where Jinder Mahal comes in. And you talked about the TNA thing, and I want to talk about that for a minute. Jinder said that, you know, he had been released from WWE. He had been working indies for 2 years. He started to get himself into better shape because he had let himself go physically, but he started getting into better shape. Then Impact Wrestling hit him up, I think because of Drew McIntyre, because him and Drew McIntyre are best friends. Impact Wrestling hit him up. They wanted to get a meeting. Out of the blue, WWE calls him, saying they want to bring him back. I'm sure it was leaked to WWE about that meeting, and Jinder himself thinks that that's probably the case. And they bring him back. And one other little side note quickly is in 2011, when Khali's contract was coming due, and WWE didn't know if he was going to re-sign, Jinder was brought to the main roster his first go-around. Mm-hmm. And the plan even back then was to make Jinder that guy for the Indian market. And I think Triple H even told him so. And then they re-signed Khali, and then Jinder kind of moved down the card.
Which is unfortunate because Jinder's always been a hard worker, and the shape that he was in September and August of this year before his body transformation, he didn't look like the Jinder Mahal who was there in like 2012. He looked really good back then too.
Right. Now I want to say one thing quickly. So going back to this Impact Wrestling thing, the reason that I think that when they brought Jinder back on this go-around, the reason that I think he spent 8 months as an enhancement talent is because I don't think WWE ever had any plans for him. I think the reason that they re-signed him was so that Impact Wrestling couldn't.
Maybe.
That's my personal opinion. I think that's why they did it. The thing is, Impact Wrestling, Sean, what are their 2 biggest markets in terms of television revenue? The UK and India.
Yeah.
Right? They don't even have a decent US contract right now. The UK and India. And I think WWE recognized, okay, they're looking to sign this guy maybe to help them in the Indian market. And so in order to try to cut that off at the knees, they re-signed him. And it's very much like the UK title ITV situation to me. And you're familiar with that situation, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to explain it very quickly in case anybody doesn't know. So ITV is the #2 network in the UK. And last October, they announced that they were going to be filming a television pilot, and Jim Ross was going to be the commentator. Then, out of nowhere, on December 15th, WWE announced that they were going to create a UK championship. They were going to hold a tournament to crown the first champion. They were going to air it on the network. And then they locked up a bunch of UK wrestlers to contracts so that ITV was unable to sign them. The ITV pilot aired. They decided they were going to then team up with Impact Wrestling to do a 10-episode series. And they were going to call it World of Sport. And then what did WWE do? They re-signed Jim Ross to a contract.
Which also hurts New Japan Pro Wrestling down the line because when his contract's due with them in January, he's going to be WWE. But
yeah, he will.
Also, I would imagine Mauro Ranallo heads back to New Japan too.
Yeah, it's possible, but I don't think that they re-signed Jim Ross thinking about New Japan. I think they signed Jim Ross.
New Japan.
Yeah, but I don't think they were at that time. Yeah. I think they signed him so ITV couldn't.
Well, because 2 birds, 1 stone. You know?
No, you're right. But I don't think they had that foresight. I think that they were thinking...
Hurt as many people as you possibly can.
Sure. But I think they were thinking, let's cut ITV off at the knees. We don't want this competition in the UK. It's a major market for us.
They've done this for decades, though.
They have.
I mean, like, they had Aldo Montoya... And they said, listen, you can go to ECW, but you can't go to WCW type of thing. Like, they structured his deal. They had no plans for Just Incredible. But WCW showed some interest in him, and they're like, anywhere but there. Matt Riddle, how many times have I talked to him about that on the show that we did?
Yeah.
He messaged them and was like, hey, guys, would you mind if I worked for Ring of Honor? And they said, yeah, we would. You should go to Evolve instead. We'll hook you up.
Right.
So, I mean, they do this all the time.
Now, I want to read a quote from the Investopedia.com story because I think it's very indicative. The guy that wrote it was pretty knowledgeable. He even said that he's a stockholder of WWE stock. So I want to read this quickly. He said, professional wrestling's popularity has been increasing in India, and WWE wants to solidify the market to keep rival companies out. That has become especially important as a number of smaller players in the company space have established beachheads in the United Kingdom, from which India could be a logical extension. WWE likely has the size and muscle to remain the dominant player in the country if it devotes more resources to the market, and that's what it's doing. And again, that came out, I believe, the third week of April. So I think that April is when things change. They launched the shop. They hired a new VP and general manager. And I think that Jinder was right place, right time. That's what I think it was. I think that when they looked at their roster, including NXT, and they thought, okay, here's a guy. Number one, he looks great. Number two, he speaks perfect English, so he can work with the core U.S. audience. He understands the WWE system. He understands how to work in front of a camera. We can kind of plug him in. We don't have to do a whole lot of training with him to learn our system. I think he was the right guy at the right time, and so he became the logical fit, even though he had been an enhancement talent for 8 months. And that's the reason why I think he was put in that spot.
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with what kind of shape he was in. Because I think if he were in the shape that he was in a year ago, I don't think WWE would have pulled the trigger on it. Because it's one thing to be a jobber every week on TV. It's one thing to be a jobber and look like Jinder Mahal does right now.
Sure.
And it's like somebody in our chat said, WWE fans will let stuff like that go if they're just explained why.
Right.
I mean, I watched Robbie Lawler lose fight after fight after fight after fight, and he said, I stopped sparring, I got smarter, and he became world champion. Jinder Mahal very clearly got in great shape.
Oh, yeah, he did. No question about it.
So that could change a career. And all it takes is Shane McMahon saying, I wanted to break into the India market. That's why I put him in the match.
No, you're absolutely right.
That's all it takes. Right.
They could still do that. I mean, they could even just do Talking Smack now and have him say it and then replay it on SmackDown the following week and everybody would get it. I want to address a couple questions that you and Anna both posed on the Post-Raw podcast. You asked a question. You said, if Jinder were black or white, would he have gotten this push? And the answer is no, he wouldn't have, at least not right now. Yeah. He wouldn't have. There is no chance if he was white that they would have taken him after being enhancement for 8 months and put him in the main event of a pay. It just wouldn't have happened. It was done strictly for business reasons. And one other thing.
And if he were black, they just wouldn't have considered it at all. Because that's what WWE does.
Yeah, maybe they put him with the New Day or something. I don't know.
Or else there's no reason why Big E shouldn't have been in the spot by now at least one time. Because he's
I don't see in Big E what you do from a single superstar point of view.
Oh, I definitely.
I just don't.
There were people who used to think Titus was that guy. And I'm like,
I thought that. I did.
I can't believe it. You saw that in Titus, but not in Big
E. I did.
More athletic, in better shape, way more charismatic. Although I think Titus in his current role is fantastic.
Titus looks the part. You put him in suits. You could put him on Ellen, and he would do a great job.
He's got the credibility, too. He is Dad of the Year.
Yeah, so I was looking outside of the in-ring. I was looking at the business side of things with Titus, too. I still believe that Titus had that potential if they had used it. Anna said something. She said, why should the Indian market get behind this Jinder character, the anti-American Jinder character? And Jinder himself said on Jericho's podcast that the promo he was supposed to cut when they started pushing him was going to be different, and Vince McMahon rewrote it and made it anti-American, which is what you saw. And I have two answers to that whole thing. First of all, I think that promo, even though it was anti-American, it was not anti-Indian, and I think that if anything, it was pro-Indian. And I think that his character is kind of pro-Indian.
Yeah.
And to me, it's almost like 2017 Heart Foundation, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of Canada US, it's India US.
Well, unfortunately, WWE's not going to be in India every other week.
No, you're right, and too bad, because it'd be amazing if they could. I think
if they did, I would say, well, they tried to sign Sanjay Dutt and he turned him down.
Right.
Man, I wonder how he feels right now. I won't say how bad.
He wouldn't have worked in that spot because he was too small.
He wasn't going to be in that spot. He probably would have been in the spot of one of the Bollywood boys, I would imagine.
Yes.
But, I mean, still, he passed it up because his buddy, Jeff Jarrett, is running Impact Wrestling again.
Right.
But, I mean, the Daivari brothers could have worked in that spot, too, but I don't know Sean Daivari's Lucha Underground status. But, man, you want to talk about knowing... Huh?
They're Middle Eastern, I think, man.
Doesn't matter with WWE. You know it doesn't matter with WWE.
I don't think I agree with that.
You know it doesn't matter with WWE.
I think when you let's say that they do PR in India
Jimmy, what did they say Yokozuna was?
Oh, this is different. They
said he was Japanese.
I don't care. This is a different time, and
they said Hassan was like, oh my God, he was Italian.
I know, but it's a different time, man. It's a different time.
Still would have done it. I really think they. I
don't think so, because then what are you going to do? You're going to send them with Jinder to do a little PR tour of India. Jinder speaking Punjabi, and they're sitting there looking at the ceiling.
Probably just wouldn't have sent him.
Potentially, but no, I think going with guys that actually.
Well, I'll say this. I don't want to say WWE. Vince McMahon. If Vince McMahon would have, because he sees people like that, and he's like, plug them in there. They'll work.
Well, I was actually going to explain that the reason that he's doing the anti-American thing, because Anna was like, why is he doing the anti-American thing? It's because that's what Vince McMahon has known for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right? When you have an ethnic heel, he's an anti-American ethnic heel. Mm-hmm. It's what he's always done. It doesn't matter if you're the Iron Sheik. It doesn't matter if you're Nikolai Volkov. It doesn't matter if you're Yokozuna. It doesn't matter if you're Muhammad Hassan. That's what he's always done. And so, of course, he's going to make him the anti-American. I think Vince McMahon wakes up and he thinks it's 1985.
Yeah.
Some days.
He thinks that some of that stuff still works. And to an extent it does. Like, I like the idea of Jinder Mahal being a babyface everywhere but here.
Yeah, and it could happen. Something else he said on the Jericho podcast, he said when we do shows in Vancouver, because there's a big Indian contingency, he gets pops, even though he's supposed to be the heel, right?
Yeah.
So that could easily happen. Very good chance.
I just absolutely think that if Vince McMahon, somebody would have to explain it to him, he would be like, what about those Daivari brothers?
I don't know.
Plus they're
I'd like to think somebody would whisper in his ear and tell him,
they would, but initially he would be like, them.
Well, anyway, so I hope we've cleared up this Jinder thing. And again, this is not a knock on Jinder Mahal, because you and I have spoken about him. He looks the part. He looks like a superstar. He's very articulate. I don't think he's been very good at cutting his promos, but he's very articulate. I don't think he's especially good in the ring, but again, he knows the system.
Another good example, sorry to interrupt, Dominic Oliver. How about Scott Hall? He's got a tan. He's Cuban.
Right. I think that was Scott Hall's idea. I think it was.
But he knew that Vince would buy it.
Yeah.
Also,
so I don't think Vince knew what Scarface was.
He didn't.
Probably.
Another thing, one of the things that was brought up a lot, there were trolls, a lot of trolls, and I call it troll culture. A lot of people they want to see the world burn. They do. For whatever reason, they think it's funny when other people are pissed off. And it's to the point now where if me, as a person who comments on wrestling, I'm like, I don't like that. I just don't like the character, the way it's portrayed, anything. It's like, crybaby type of thing. And I had one guy saying, you just don't like him because he's not an indie guy. And I said, what? He came up with Tyson Kidd and Stampede. He's more indie than a lot of indie, quote-unquote, indie guys.
I want to touch upon this for a minute. I'm gonna put you to task just a little bit. So I caught that, and I think I asked you yesterday. Can you tell me exactly what the guy said? Because I knew I was going to talk about it. So 2 comments I want to make about that. The first comment is I think there's a lot of ignorance about the independents and about how much money can be made in the independents. Because there are some guys now, and Cody Rhodes comes to mind, who's making as much money, if not more, on the independents than he did in WWE. And the reason for that is that, number one, you're not paying for hotels or airfare. WWE only covers airfare, not hotel. Number 2, you can name your price. Number 3, you get to keep your own merch money. So whatever you sell at the show, whatever you sell online, you get to keep it. So I think there's a lot of ignorance. I think that a lot of people, when they hear independent, they think of bingo halls, and they think, oh, you're making $50 a night. That's just not the case for a lot of guys anymore. So that's the first thing.
Cody Rhodes is one of the most popular independent wrestlers right now. Would you have ever called him an indie guy? No. He was from the first bump he took, I think, WWE. And now he's selling merch like crazy. He's doing all kinds of stuff. Ultimately, it's about making a good character out of Jinder Mahal and making it make sense. I think they can do that. Perhaps not as much as they did with, say, The Undertaker, Jimmy.
Good one, man. Good one.
We spoke to J.J. Dillon for the latest Story Time with J.J. Dillon. This one is a two-parter. You'll get part 2 next week. But he spoke to us about The Undertaker, one of the greatest characters in WWE history. And J.J. was around for really some of the instrumental moments of The Undertaker. So check it out, you guys. Obviously, one I want to talk about is The Undertaker. He came in at Survivor Series 1990. He did a dark match before that as well, but he had a run before that. Had you met The Undertaker before he came into WWF?
Not that I can recollect, no. And I did not, you know, people would, I did not look at the other, when I was working with WCW, I never watched the WWF product. When I went to work for Vince, I no longer watched the WCW. And I never felt that I could do my job to the best of my ability if I was reacting to what somebody else was doing. I rather looked at what my job was and what my challenge was, focus all my attention on doing that to the best of my ability. So I did not see Mark Calloway before he came in the first time. And when he came in, like me, that meeting was in private at Vince's house.
How'd that meeting go?
It went very good. I mean, he's an impressive guy. He's big, you know, had the size and just, you know, some in the business they call it the it factor. And if you round the business on the executive side, it's hard to describe, you know, to find the words to describe, and eventually, like it's just, I don't know, I can't explain it, but he's got it, and it's like it's I guess another word for natural charisma, and he had that, and I think whatever Vince's first reaction was, he thought maybe you could be a Viking, you know, with the helmet with the horns and
the berserker. Basically,
well, I don't know that there was that connection, but he just saw this big guy and what Vince saw in him. You know, Vince had a very creative mind, and he had a department that he would then take someone and turn them over to this department and say, okay, look at them, look at their build, their body, their features, what they do, and play with it and feed me some ideas. And he would then a lot of times take something that they would suggest that they saw in them, because they're looking at it from a different perspective. They were not necessarily wrestling people. They were looking more at like taking somebody and casting them as a character. And I will say this, to me, you know, as I look back for my years, and I was there before they went public, so I was there when it was the WWF for just short of 8 years, and then I was with WCW for 5 years, and before they went out of business. But in all of the years that went by, my opinion was, and I feel that I've got some credibility when I say it, I think that The Undertaker is the greatest persona, character, however you want to define it, that was ever with the WWF/WWE. No, hands down.
Yeah, and I think that he and the character, they go hand in hand. You got to have that for him to get over to the degree that he did.
What's so amazing?
WCW had him, World Class had him, and New Japan had him, and didn't find that special thing. Did that surprise you that even though the Undertaker character wasn't around then, did it surprise you that they missed out on him?
Vince, again, was a wrestling business 24/7 and third generation. They knew how to recognize talent. and then how to make stars out of talent. And the people at WCW, I mean, you mentioned The Undertaker, and you think about the people that came out of there. Stone Cold Steve Austin came out of there. Chris Jericho came out of there. Mick Foley came out of there. I mean, there's a lot of people who just
Hall and Nash came out of there and then went back.
Yes, were there, and that was another part too, that Vince pioneered licensing and marketing. And the guys that were there did extremely well. Every quarter they would get a printout that would be like a small phone book, and on the back would be a check, all broke down on what the product was. If it was something that they got a big share because it was maybe a DVD on their career where, you know, they got most of it, or, you know, however the percentages broke down. And I mean, it would even be products that went out that were then some that were returned as a credit back against it. I mean, it was all laid out there based on their contractual agreements. And in the back was those guys had some. I remember them saying that the Iron Sheik that one year when action figures were a big deal, he made more money from his licensing and merchandising than he made from his in-ring appearances. And when the guys got to, like when Hall and Nash got to WCW, they were accustomed to that quarterly check for licensing and merchandising. So they made a sweet deal with Eric Bischoff for their wrestling talent. And then after some time went by, they went back to Bischoff and they said, you know, we got a substantial amount of money above our wrestling contract for licensing and merchandising. You're trying to get it launched, but nothing's happening. So you really need to make it up to us in some other way. And the only thing that we can see is make an adjustment to our wrestling contract because we're not getting that other money. And what argument could he have? Well, no, I don't agree with that because they tried and just never got it launched off the ground. So Hall and Nash went back in and again, played the fiddle and kept redoing their contracts, getting more and more money.
A Viking character is what Vince McMahon saw when he first met The Undertaker. So we talk about a Viking character, The Undertaker. I don't think my idea that he would see the Daivari boys and think Indian cronies. I don't think that would be far-fetched.
Maybe. I want to say one more thing about the going back to the Jinder thing that I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
When we were talking about how the company's been unable to monetize that market, and you know there was no shop for a long time, and there was no network and all that. I forgot to touch upon the social media thing because India does have a massive social media following when it comes to WWE, and so some people might be like, oh, they must be making a killing that way. I know this from being in the online advertising world myself. India is a very tough market to monetize. There aren't a lot of big advertisers that are looking for traffic in India. The rates that you're able to get are very minimal compared to what you're able to get to US traffic. And so that Punjabi celebration video, for example, I bet you the vast majority of that traffic is coming from India, and I bet you WWE is getting pennies from YouTube on
might
that.
Be getting pennies anyway. Like,
well, they have a separate deal.
Yeah.
They're not like regular YouTube.
We're YouTube partners, and we're still getting F. There's a petition going around, by the way, guys. Go ahead and sign that. I'll retweet that again to get YouTube and Google to take a look at the monetization of pro wrestling. We got What Culture Pro Wrestling having to cancel shows and tapings.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about that today.
That's heartbreaking. That's terrible. That's costing. That's putting people. It's literally costing people jobs.
And from what I understand, the catalyst for this is that there were hate-filled videos on YouTube that scared off advertisers that didn't have anything to do with wrestling.
Correct. It's their algorithm.
Right.
And to me, if you've had an algorithm that makes that generalization for a month, I don't know what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. So they deem that it is non-advertiser friendly content. And like you said, WCPW, What Culture Pro Wrestling, they had to shut down their free show called Loaded because they just weren't making any money. And they had to cancel all their tapings, June, July, and August for the same reason. So it's unfortunate.
I'm gonna retweet that petition. So I encourage all of you to sign it. Maybe it'll do something, maybe it won't. But I think at some point, whether you tweet at Google or at YouTube, let them know.
Right.
This does affect people's livelihood. Personally, it hasn't affected me, but it affects the return that Jimmy Van gets on the stuff that I do. So,
you know what I should be doing?
No.
This should be like 80s pro wrestling. I should give you a cut of the house.
Now I'm gonna have to fly coach when I come to Toronto,
right,
for the show.
I was gonna put you in baggage claim before. Coach is an upgrade.
Oh, wow.
How much time do we got left because of our little screw up the first time around? How much time do we got left?
20, 25 minutes.
20, 25. Okay, let's talk about, I got some stuff I'm actually probably going to have to save for next week, man, because I got so much on my list this week. Let's talk about the Cruiserweight division.
Yeah. I don't want to, but okay.
Well, I want to talk about it because of something Chris Jericho said.
Yeah.
So I think you and I will agree that the Cruiserweight division in WWE has not exactly exceeded or gotten over the way we thought it was going to, right?
They killed it immediately. They deemed it unimportant before 205 Live even started.
Yeah, and I agree, and I was going to go into some of the reasons for that. So obviously, they turned it into a sideshow act. They put purple ropes up. They put a different canvas up. They kind of, they differentiate it that way. Another issue is that the Cruiserweight wrestlers, all they do every week is wrestle each other, and they never have them work anybody else on the roster. So that's kind of different. But there's something else, and you've touched upon this on other podcasts before, and Chris Jericho talked about this. He did an interview this week on Busted Open Radio, and that is the style of the Cruiserweights is no longer any different from what the non-Cruiserweights do in WWE. And Jericho, here's a quick quote. Jericho said, "The style isn't that different from a Seth Rollins, a Jericho. I think I see every single person does a tope from Samoa Joe to Dean Ambrose, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. So what is the difference?" And he's right. There really is no difference. Jericho kind of explained that they need to have more characters in the Cruiserweight division to get it over. I think Neville was a step in the right direction. And what Jericho's suggesting is that they put Enzo Amore in the division and put the title on him. And I think that would be a great idea to do that with Enzo.
I always thought that putting Enzo in the Cruiserweight division was a good idea. I said Xavier Woods should make an appearance there too because he meets the limit. They should do that. Finn Balor should. They should. I mean, they used to have Ric Flair show up in ECW and do hardcore matches with the Big Show in WWE's ECW. Right. Yeah, that's actually another point Shane Helms always brought up. When he's agenting X Division matches in Impact Wrestling, he actually cited Seth Rollins and said, that style's in the main event, so you have to do something even more different now than P.D. Williams was doing 10 years ago. Right. I remember when P.D. Williams brought the Canadian Destroyer, I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. What is that? I would see Sanjay Dutt and AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels do things that I hadn't seen before. Right. These guys aren't doing anything that we've not seen before. But Jericho also brought up that people romanticize that old WCW Cruiserweight division like it was something that everybody cared about. And he said, but it wasn't. Mm-hmm. Because he wrestled Eddie Guerrero and nobody cared about it. Mm-hmm, now, if that happened today, people would go nuts. It's just, it serves virtually a similar purpose to WWE that it did WCW, but the difference is in WCW, you were seeing things that you weren't going to see in the Hulk Hogan-Kevin Nash match later that night. But in the WWE's Cruiserweight division, you're seeing things that you might see in a Seth Rollins match versus Finn Balor later that evening.
Oh, you're seeing things that you will see in a Seth Rollins
match. With Suicide Dive, I said that the other night. Seth Rollins should maybe be like, you know what, guys? I've got like 7 finishers and none of them have worked. I don't need this Suicide Dive. This is the kind of conversation Seth Rollins has to have, and maybe he has with the Vince McMahon. Like, man, you all have taken a lot from me. I'm going to give this to them. Maybe give me my curb stomp back. Maybe let me do something else, because I don't even know what the dude's finish is anymore. I have no idea.
Well, it's still the pedigree.
No, he started using that knee.
Yeah, but I thought he was testing it out, but he was still using the pedigree in big matches, no?
I don't remember the last time he used a pedigree. It's been over a month ago.
I don't know.
And he had the curb stomp. He's had the flying knee. He's had the pull. Like, the guy, and when he can't do anything that sets him apart, because it either doesn't work or gets taken away. He does something that might set cruiserweights apart. And Dean Ambrose doesn't need to do a suicide dive. For one, his sucks. But then when you see it in a cruiserweight match, not only are those guys not being cared about in general because they can't do anything to set themselves apart, guys twice their size are too.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about Dean Ambrose. I want to talk about something UFC related. Okay. Because, like I've said many times on this show, if I think the wrestling audience will find it interesting, I want to cover it. And I think they will. So I want to talk about the Reebok deal because something happened last weekend that I think people will find interesting. So let's go over this quickly. So in December of 2014, the UFC signed a 6-year, $70 million sponsorship deal with Reebok. And as part of the deal, UFC fighters had to give up their in-ring sponsors, and they had to give up any sponsored gear that they might have worn for fights. And they could only wear Reebok apparel, which they call the fight kit. And
which
then
you own one of.
I have the Brock Lesnar one. I do, because my wife got it for me, and I did it to kind of get behind Brock Lesnar.
If they had a Brock Lesnar Kentucky fight kit, I might have it.
There you go. There you go. But anyway, so the fighters had to wear this stuff. They had to give up their sponsors, and they were paid on a tiered system. And they did it based on how many fights experience they had. So the lowest tier, you got $2,500 if you had 1 to 5 bouts of experience. The highest tier was $20,000 if you had 21 bouts or more experience. And if you were in a title fight, the champion got $40,000 and the challenger got $30,000. They did a big reveal in June of 2015. They did a big press conference. They paraded all the fighters out on stage, had them all wearing the gear. They kind of looked like circus animals, the way that they were kind of paraded around out there. Then the stuff went on sale, and it was just a comedy of errors when it went on sale. Yeah. It was shocking that a company like Reebok would fuck up to this degree. They were misspelling names.
That's why your boy only wears Nike.
Well, there you go. So Gilbert Melendez, they spelt his name Giblert instead of Gilbert.
So he was suspended for a USADA violation. And I remember making the joke that he needed to put on a mask and come back as Giblert Melendez.
Right, Giblert Melendez. Yeah. And then there's a fighter named Ronaldo Souza, and he uses the nickname Jacare. That's his nickname. On his shirt, they had Jacare as his first name, and they had Ronaldo in parentheses, thinking that was his nickname. And there were a lot of other examples where they screwed that stuff up. When they announced the tiered system, a lot of fighters were very public about how they were getting screwed out of money. And there was a guy by the name of Brendan Schaub. He's a mid-level heavyweight. He was never a title contender. Didn't make a ton of money in terms of his fight pay, but he was making 6 figures in sponsorships per fight. And he came out and said after the Reebok deal went into play that he was going to be getting 10 grand on his next fight. So he's going to be losing essentially 90% or more of his income.
Dana White called him out and called him a liar for it.
How would Dana White know?
Well, here's the thing. He brought on a show a list of his sponsors and said, there's no way. Well, maybe he needs to do his homework a little bit better on his fighters, because Brendan Schaub is one of the great success stories of MMA. One of his podcasts is one of the biggest, to the point to where they were like, hey, Fox Sports, we don't need you. We're going independent. And then he has a spin-off podcast that is now doing great. He took the list of sponsors. He took his last sponsor invoice to Joe Rogan, and Rogan verified it on the air.
Yep. And to make it even worse, and it's amazing sometimes how big corporations have such little foresight, because to make it worse, the UFC and Reebok cherry-picked top talent and gave them separate deals, separate from everybody else. So Ronda Rousey got a separate deal, Conor McGregor got a separate deal, meaning they didn't have to be on that same tiered system. They had $1 million deals separate from everybody else. Here's where it gets...
Sage Northcutt.
Okay. Here's where it got funny. And this is why I want to talk about it, even though this is the wrestling podcast. Last weekend, there was a fighter retreat in Las Vegas, a UFC fighter retreat. And as part of that fighter retreat, each fighter was given a coupon for one-time 50% off discount on Reebok merchandise, if you can believe it. So they didn't even have the class to give them free stuff from Reebok. They gave them a coupon saying that they can have a one-time discount of 50%, which is so ridiculous. And then they had a sponsorship session with fighters, and they had a guy from Reebok up there. There was a guy from Anheuser-Busch up there. And a UFC lightweight fighter named Cajun Johnson spoke up. And he basically said, you're taking money out of my pocket. I've lost 80% of my sponsorship money. And how can you justify that? A bunch of the fighters applauded. Some of them took videos of it on their phone. They ended up pulling Johnson out of there, and they shut down that session. And I guess the good news about it is that Johnson said in an interview afterwards that the UFC went to him. They took down a list of his grievances. They had a meeting with all the fighters later where they could kind of air their grievances. But I wanted to bring this up because I just thought it was so ludicrous, that they would do that. It's not very much unlike the network, where WWE puts in this network. Guys are no longer getting pay-per-view money, and all the wrestlers are running around asking, how are we going to get paid on this? No one has gotten paid on this. The top guys are getting taken care of because they're the top guys. The guys lower on the card aren't seeing anything. It's unbelievable to me that these companies are making. I mean, UFC sold for $4 billion. And the fighters see this. They recognize the money they're making, and yet they've taken money out of their pocket. It's mind-blowing that they'd be so stupid.
Cajun Johnson has been outspoken for a long time. He hasn't been able to fight in about a year and a half, but some of you may remember there was a CM Punk Q&A, and there was a guy who got up and said, you're taking money out of my pocket and all this stuff. I didn't agree with him on that, and that was Cajun Johnson. I didn't agree with him on that. CM Punk is worth what he can make.
I agree.
It's not CM Punk's fault, but I completely agree with him on the Reebok thing.
Right.
I think he should be able to go out and get a signed thing prepaid and say, hey, Reebok, if you can match what these people are paying me, then you can exclusively sponsor me. Otherwise, piss off. I think that should be his right to do so. And Leslie Smith, it was funny because I mentioned on the Showdown Joe show yesterday, guys, check that out. Holy Smokes with myself and Showdown Joe, where we really got into this, the Chris Cyborg assault situation. But Leslie Smith, UFC had hired Kobe Bryant as like the primary speaker, and he is a hell of a speaker to have there. And while he's being paid by the UFC, Leslie Smith says, we're trying to get a Fighters Association off the ground. How important was your union, your association, to what you do? And Kobe said, it's crucial. It's almost mandatory in what you do and what we do. So I wonder how much this, I wonder if the UFC set this up expecting things like this. But the thing is, they didn't need to set up a fighter retreat to do this because people have spoken out about it for years. From the Brendan Schaub thing. Brendan Schaub retired. They challenged him, and he said, nah, I'm good. And now he's driving a Tesla around. Well, he's not driving. The Tesla drives itself, if that tells you what kind of success he's had.
Yeah.
And he's a successful stand-up comedian. You got people jumping to Bellator.
Yep, that's right. That's another thing. A lot of guys have jumped to Bellator because of this. So.
It's a crazy situation.
Yeah. Should we tackle the nicknames?
I don't know if we should, because it might make me mad. But Jimmy.
Really?
But Jimmy.
This is a stupid song. It just goes on and on. You might find some meaning, but you would be wrong.
How would that make you mad?
When I gotta remember how many stupid nicknames they use. Not only that, Jimmy. It's not just that. Our boy @Guzamatic on Twitter counted. And mercy on the guy. He also did an count for me for Tom Phillips. We had a lot of people doing some good work for us. We had somebody make a video of Nakamura and the Hokey Pokey because I said he could make that work.
I saw that.
And he did.
That was phenomenal that guy did that.
How could that work? And then he did a remix of the Cassius Ohno theme with Tom Phillips saying, oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with some of these stats. Or do you have them? Or do I
have them.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
Go ahead and do it.
So first off, Guzamatic, who is from Edmonton, Alberta. He's a fan of the Oilers, so good for you. He actually asked me on Tuesday. He said, hey, do you want me to do a count of the nicknames for SmackDown tonight? And I said, no, man, we're good. You've done enough. I think we can drive our point home. So the first thing I want to do is that little video intro that we just had. That song was performed by a guy by the name of Trevor Strong. And you can see his work at trevorstrong.org. He's from Kingston, Ontario, Canada, which is close to where I grew up.
I thought that was just a stock song.
No, man. That's a guy. I don't even know him. I don't even know him. He's a guy on YouTube, and it turns out that him and I are from the same town or the same area. And so check out trevorstrong.org to see his work. So Guzzo-Matic did the count for us, and on the Backlash pay-per-view, there were 95 mentions of nicknames, including 42 on the pre-show and 53 on the main card. The top 2 were the Welcoming Committee. There were 28 total mentions of that, and the Maharaja, there were 19 total mentions of that. Then on Raw on Monday, there were 74 mentions of nicknames, including 32 by Corey Graves, 22 by Michael Cole, and then some of the wrestlers used them. And I want to use a few examples because I'd love to give some examples. Byron Saxton on Backlash said, "I think it's safe to say the artist successfully created his masterpiece tonight here in Chicago." And I was like, just fire him. Just fire him. You don't need him. Then on Raw, so on Monday night, I tuned in late because I've got family in town. I've got a baby due any day. And
I know, I flew in.
Yes, you did, and sat in the bathroom. So I tuned in late, and so I happened to notice on Twitter that you guys were talking about the usage of the big dog in the opening segment. And I decided, you know what, I'm not even going to bother with the big dog this week. I'm not even going to bother because, clearly I missed a lot of good stuff when I missed that opening segment. So let's talk about some other stuff. So Michael Cole called Sasha Banks the boss 3 times in a 5-minute segment, which is awesome. Corey Graves, who is starting to irritate me. He's starting to really irritate me, and even when he says good stuff, to me it's kind of it's overshadowed by the bad stuff. He's really starting to get irritating. So during the Sheamus versus Matt Hardy match, there was a commercial break in the middle of the match, right? When they came back from commercial break, within the first 30 seconds, Sean, I timed it. Within the first 30 seconds after the commercial break, he had said the Celtic Warrior 3 times.
Yeah, that one's a bad one. That one's one of the worst, and he's one of the worst offenders on that. And, I've always liked Corey Graves' commentary before main roster.
Right.
He seemed like the breath of fresh air, and I'm like, why'd y'all get rid of Jerry Lawler if this is what you were going to do?
Right, yeah.
What's the point? Now you're paying somebody else main roster travel money. I assume he got a pay bump.
I don't know, but the problem is that Michael Cole, everybody reports to Michael Cole in that gig. And Michael Cole is just the worst corporate shill in the universe and the biggest corporate kiss ass next to JBL in the company. And so Corey Graves is learning the way from Michael Cole, and that's not going to bode well for wrestling fans. Alexa Bliss was in a 7-minute segment with Mickie James, including the match, and Corey Graves called her the goddess 4 times in 7 minutes. And then one other thing about Corey Graves, and I've mentioned this before, you notice how some guys have really stupid nicknames, and Corey Graves will use them in serious situations. Like he'll use them with serious tones, and he'll use them when talking about what are supposed to be serious storylines. So I noticed on Raw, he called Noam Dar the Scottish Supernova twice, and he said it in serious situations. He called Tony Nese the premier athlete. He called Neville the king of the cruiserweights, and he said them with a serious tone. And it's just like, how can you take this stuff seriously? It's just so stupid. I want to make one little side note. This is not related to nicknames, but it's about Raw. When Elias Sampson, who made his in-ring debut on Raw, when he got a near fall on Dean Ambrose, Booker T said that this would be the upset of the year. And I thought, did you not see Backlash? Come on.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you saw Backlash. You know what happened. How could you call anything else
honestly, I thought maybe Sami Zayn beating Baron Corbin might have been an even bigger upset. I didn't see that coming.
No. Jinder winning the title, I don't know if anything's going to beat it this year unless James Ellsworth beats Jinder Mahal on SmackDown on Tuesday.
Mojo beat Jinder last month.
Yes, he did.
But, yeah, Booker T also didn't use those nicknames on that count. Graves used it the most. And the offense that I bring up a lot is Tom Phillips calling moves
Yes.
127 times in 104 minutes of wrestling on Sunday. That is unacceptable. And by tonight, I will have watched Tom Phillips call matches 4 of the last 5 nights.
Right.
And that is also rough because I have a feeling he could do better, but I've not seen anything to lead me to believe that. Great announcers can make the difference. Jim Ross called a fantastic match on Saturday at NXT with Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. I've seen these guys each 2 or 3 times, and I care about them more than I care about a lot of the main roster guys because of Jim Ross and Nigel McGuinness, their great commentary, the way they tell stories while people in the ring are telling stories. It makes a difference, and we get it. You want the name on the marquee. You want all that stuff. You want to sell a shirt, some stupid-ass shirt with a sword on it for Nakamura. Okay, cool, man.
Do you think that Phillips knows the names of all the moves and he's just choosing not to call them or being told not to call them? Or do you think he doesn't know the names of all the moves?
I don't know. I've been given no reason to indicate either way. I've never heard him call the moves.
Right. How would you like it if he used Vince McMahon commentary terminology in today's setting? So how would you like it if Tom Phillips said, what a maneuver?
It'd be better than
I think it'd actually be pretty good if he did that.
Yeah. I know. The thing is, I get it. They're an entertainment and all that stuff, but you even see UFC, as I've mentioned, they're moving away from the shill commentary because they got rid of Mike Goldberg, and that was one of their issues with him. If I'm calling fights for Premier MMA Championships this Saturday, if Billy Donovan, the matchmaker, comes up to me and he's like, listen, man, every time somebody gets hit, I want you to say, oh. I'm going to say, listen, man, every time somebody gets hit, you're not going to hear anything because I'm not fucking doing it.
I thought you told me that you were a whore like a half an hour ago.
Man, I kind of went back on that one, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. You did. So I think what's going to happen is he's going to tell you on Saturday to say, oh, and you're going to say, yes, sir, may I have another?
No, I'm not going to. To be fair, you don't ask me to compromise my integrity, at least until it comes to fake shitting on a toilet.
Yes.
But to be honest, hey, my moral compass, that doesn't like set it off or anything.
I can't believe that your audio unplugged because you actually were making an attempt to shit on a digital toilet.
This is why you bought me the software.
Actually made it unplugged because you were going to essentially shit on a shower curtain. That's pretty awesome. It's pretty good. One other thing about Jinder Mahal real quickly. A guy by the name of Graham Sucha, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name. He is a member of Canadian Parliament, and his home base is Calgary. And this week, during a Parliament session, he congratulated Jinder Mahal on winning the WWE title at Backlash. So I thought that was cool. I remember when Kevin Owens won the Universal title, and a member of Parliament from Montreal in a session of Parliament congratulated him on winning the title. And now this Graham Sucha has done it. So,
yeah, I know one thing. I don't want to see Jinder Mahal work that type of main event match.
It was not a good match. I agree.
I thought it was decent, a little bit above average, maybe.
A lot of rest holds.
But that's on the Randy Orton curve, because Randy Orton's just boring. In the ring, outside of the ring, I'm not.
You and I have talked about this before. We've talked about how Randy Orton, he's got so much talent, and he's got so much experience, and he's got so much potential, and yet he calls it in. And in the last 10 years, he has changed nothing, except now he started wearing that little hoodie vest. That's really literally the only thing he's changed in the last 2 years, 10 years maybe, is that he wears that little hoodie vest. He has changed nothing about his look, his music, his skill set in the ring, nothing. And I think Alex on the post-Raw show on Monday, he said that he would rather watch Jinder Mahal than watch a complacent Randy Orton.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right. And you know something, a lot of people shit on John Cena. John Cena, for every big match, he throws out a new move that he had been working on. And I don't think he gets enough credit for doing that. Orton never does that.
That's all I asked for, is to see something a little different. Kenny Omega is the best about that. Like, not just adding a move. Like, he'll sell a move differently than you've seen it before. Like, if he gets crotched on the rope, AJ Styles also very good about that. He'll tumble down to the floor in a way that you have not seen somebody do either before or in a long time.
Right. And not all of Cena's stuff works. Remember when he was doing that springboard stunner?
Yeah.
And he stopped doing it because it wasn't working. But imagine the schedule that Cena kept when he was wrestling full time. Unlike anybody, including Randy Orton, nobody kept the schedule John Cena did. And yet when it was time for a big match on pay-per-view, he somehow found the time to whip up a new move. You got to respect that. And Randy Orton has been calling it in for a decade. And
and I think he's resting on his laurels. A couple of years ago, they got really lucky that he became a meme.
Right. Which was actually really great. And I wish that they had capitalized on that more.
They should have. I mean, there were women in my kickboxing class who would get on the mats and pretend to RKO me out of nowhere, and I'm like, how do you know what the hell an RKO is?
Right.
And they're like, it's all over Twitter.
And when the whole dive thing came out, he posted one of a guy jumping off a diving board, and then Orton did the RKO. He actually posted one himself. Yeah, they should have taken better advantage of that. They should have had him going out there dropping RKOs on 5 guys at a time or something.
He's got the best move to get over with.
It's true. It's true.
The best.
But he has been, like you said, very complacent. He's been like that for a long time.
What do you got going on this week, Jimmy?
I have a baby due any day. And I was telling Sean, we have a C-section scheduled for next week because our first baby was born through an emergency C-section. Mm-hmm. So to make sure there's no complications, we're going to schedule it. But my wife thinks it's going to come any day. So I was telling Sean I'm on basically standby until this happens. And I may or may not be here next Wednesday, depending on whether or not this kid comes. So that's basically what I'm doing, man. I'm in a holding pattern waiting for this kid to come around.
Best of luck, definitely.
Going to be a boy too, man. So
I was about to ask if it was a boy or a girl.
Maybe in 18 years, when Fightful.com is celebrating its 19th anniversary, I'm going to say, Sean, I'd like to introduce you to your new boss.
And it'll be The List, your boy, and The List's boy?
Could be like that. The List and the boy's boy.
So it'd be The List and your boy.
Well, then I guess it'd be, you would no longer do the show. It'd be me and my kid.
In 18 years.
Yeah, maybe it'd be the List boy and your boy.
Hey, I'm good with still being here in 18 years.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. That's all I got, man. That's all I got. I can't wait.
See what happens. What the hell's that supposed to mean?
Let me ask you a question. So you know how you did the week that we had all the bloopers because of the Wirecast issues, and you turned it into a separate clip?
Yeah.
Are you going to do that this time too? Are you going to keep that and turn it into a separate clip?
Well, I mean, I don't have to because it already is a separate clip.
Yeah, but you're going to keep the beginning of that podcast, though, right? And throw it into this one.
Yeah, but I mean, it won't catch any of the audio from our blooper.
Oh, you're right, because the audio was out. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Guys, if this show isn't up here in a little bit, it's because I'm editing it.
Right. I was told by people on my team that the beginning was very entertaining, they said.
Well, it was.
And Nigel admitted to his what's the word I'm looking for? His conspiring with you.
Hey, Jimmy, let's talk about something real quick.
Okay.
You hired me, and we talked pay before this too, because you're like, I'm not telling you what anybody makes, and I'm like, listen, I get the scale.
Mm-hmm.
I get the scale, but let's talk about how cunning I am. The fact that you spent hundreds of dollars on that studio and that background and those cardboard cutouts. I spent $40 on a green screen and a stand, and I got what you got.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have had it without me. I was the originator.
But I'm just saying, cunning.
I was the originator.
Now, I've watched enough Investigation Discovery to know that you don't have shit on Nigel. Nigel didn't admit to anything.
Oh, yes, he did.
And you can't get me to admit. You're trying to pull the, well, Nigel already said. You're trying to get charges on both of us. It's not going to happen.
He came in here at 5 o'clock yesterday to take the photo of the background. He told me so, because I told Nigel, let me hear it. I got to hear it. And Lindsay walked in here, and Lindsay gave me like a stone look. And she said, I had nothing to do with this. She said,
which is exactly what somebody would say. Did you hook her up to a polygraph? I'm sure you have one in there.
Do you want me to?
You should. That's a segment.
I've known Lindsay for a lot of years, so I can tell by looking her in the eye usually.
Well, I have known Lindsay for approximately 1 year, and I can tell you that she planned it.
I don't think so. This was all you. And you conspired with Nigel to get it done. And you know what? Good on you, because it was creative. The problem was you took it too far. You became Bret Hart. You believed in your gimmick.
I really became Bret Hart, though, on the show. I was in his photo.
You were in his photo frame. That's right. You did become Bret Hart for a minute. That's true. But it was very creative until you took it too far. You ran with the gimmick too long. You tried to shit in a digital toilet, and everything went to hell after that.
At your request.
You said you're a whore. So all I got to do, you're like a trained monkey. All I got to do is give you tasks, and you'll do them, apparently. So, that's why if the guy on Saturday says, I want you to say, oh, you're going to say, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He wouldn't say that. He's thrilled to have me aboard. By the
And
way,
how
guys,
did he find you? Did he find you from Fightful.com?
no, oh gosh, no. I've worked with him for years.
Oh, because I was going to say, otherwise I expect a commission.
No, years and years and years.
Call me Vern Gagne. I want 10% of your purse.
I think I've worked with him since 2012, maybe. I've done commentary for a couple other promotions that he's worked, and yeah, it's going to be on Flow Combat this Saturday if you guys want to check it out.
Absolutely, cool. Yeah. Good luck to you, man. In all seriousness, I know you'll do fine, so good luck to you.
I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while because I've focused more on Fightful. I took one commentary job last fall, and I'm getting back into it a little bit more as we streamline stuff. But if it conflicts with a UFC show or something, I'm not going to do it. Right. I got very lucky this week because the UFC show is on Sunday instead of Saturday. So, yeah.
Is that the Gustafson one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might try to watch that if I can.
But yeah, I'll do some commentary. I've been in talks to do a wrestling show, but that to do commentary and to actually perform. But like I said, if it conflicts with a WWE pay-per-view or UFC show,
right,
not interested.
Right.
Not interested.
Cool, man.
Well, I think that's all we got. I think that's all we got. Everybody, register Fightful.com. You'll get members-only podcasts. I'm going to do a podcast this week, I think, that is going to be like how I would book it. And that should be a lot of fun. Jimmy,
are you going to take questions again?
Yeah, probably. Well, that's not going to be for our members only. That's just going to be for a Fightful feature.
Oh, okay. Because otherwise I was going to submit some on Fightful or on YouTube or something.
I'll probably do a members only show within the next week or two.
Okay, cool.
Where can they follow you on Twitter, Jimmy?
At JimmyVan74.
You can follow me straight back home to you in Kentucky. I got here in record time. Fastest man alive.
It's true. It's like you were beamed down by whatever the hell it was, Star Trek.
I don't know, some Star Wars, Star Trek BS.
What's the name of what was it, USS Enterprise, right?
What the hell am I supposed to know?
Oh, you know this stuff. Don't bullshit me.
No, I wanted to bring this up, actually, because I was talking to my wife about why maybe I disliked particularly the first 45 minutes of Star Wars so much.
Yeah, okay.
Because a lot of the first Star Wars was introducing you to characters, but even though I had never watched any of it, I already knew who all the characters were and basically what their affiliations were, because almost everybody does.
Sure, it's pop culture.
It's pop culture. It's Star Wars. It's huge. So they were introducing me to all these guys, and I'm like, on with the shit already. I already know, but yeah. But I would like Ventura and the rest of the office to know that Jimmy is safe. He's okay.
I am. I am not stuck with Sean Ross Sapp anymore. He beamed back to Kentucky.
After I dropped an upper decker in your office bathroom.
Oh.
As you saw. That's
why
my audio came loose.
A little familiar. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We're here every Wednesday, guys. Of course, me and Showdown Joe are back Sunday afternoon, right after UFC Sweden. Definitely check that out. Also, post-Raw, SmackDown, WWE shows, post-NXT TakeOver shows. We got lots of stuff for you at Fightful.com. If you haven't visited Fightful.com, definitely do that. We got lots of cool stuff there. Lots of cool stuff. Until next time, guys, we're out.